afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Fuse Games Conference, a completely online and free conference from Staffordshire University's Games Department. And welcome back for our third talk of the day. And our next guests are going to be James Smith, CG lead, and Liam Sinclair, CG artist at Curve Digital, who are going to be talking about vehicle art as well. Stuart Butler, my colleague, the course director for the design course at the university, is also going to be joining me. So welcome, each of you.
Hi, Rob.
So we're going to talk about vehicle art and specifically what that means to yourselves at Curve Digital. And you've got a unique way of going about things. So let's dive in.
Absolutely. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. I'm James, as Rob said, CG lead here at Curve. This is Liam, CG artist at Curve and ex-Staffs alumni.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, as Rob says, we kind of take vehicle art in a little bit different direction to what I imagine most of you have experienced, in that we are not a games company and we don't operate in that space. We operate in an advertising space. We produce marketing material mostly for lead automotive manufacturers, Toyota, Hyundai, Audi, BMW, all the kind of standout players in the automotive world. And our kind of creative process is kind of what we wanted to walk you through today. Because we think it will be a little bit of a different experience to what most of you are used to. We are based in the Midlands. We're not too far outside Nottingham. And as a company, we've been operating for 17 and a half years, I think. Cannot be too exact. So we've got a little presentation put together. Rob, can you just let me know if you can see this? Oh, there we go. Perfect. Yes, we're on that. Sorry, it's the first time using this platform, but we'll get to grips with it. So here we are. We are Curve Digital. As I said, we've been operating for quite a long time. Recently moved offices and looked to kind of expand our workforce as we become really more kind of ingrained in a lot of our advertising agencies' workflows. So we work mainly in Unreal Engine, which for us, especially in the past couple of years, has been massively beneficial. We can create very, very fast. We can very quickly create scenes and imagery and animations that look fantastic, but we're not beholden to the kind of offline rendering that we used to do, which was in Max and V-Ray, and before that Max and Corona. We still do use Max and Photoshop, After Effects, Adobe Premiere as supplementary pieces of software to our work, but for the most part, we are day in, day out inside Unreal. Getting used to a game engine was, for some of us at least, quite interesting. I think, obviously, Liam, you had a bit of a more common knowledge of kind of how to work in a game scenario. Myself, I was stuck in offline rendering mode for a good couple of years, and it took a while to kind of switch the brain. But yeah, Liam, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, coming from more of a vehicle artist side from uni, where we did model a lot more and come from Unreal, it gave me a bit more of an understanding of how the program worked and how we can render faster and develop ideas. However, coming into a CG side of it all, it was a very different scenario, as games is a bit more focused on poly counts and everything like that. We don't have as much worry in that scenario. So whereas a vehicle in a games situation might be 100,000 tries, we can go from an average of 15 million tries just for one car and be working with multiple cars in that situation. So it really does improve the amount of depth and realism we can get and detail within these vehicles, and it really helps us stand out a lot more in our industry.
I think a big part of switching to Unreal for us is simply the time. We were previously in Max and V-Ray rendering animations at maybe 30 minutes a frame. When you're working at 24 frames per second and making a minute-long animation, that time really starts to add up. In Unreal, we're down at sort of 2-3 minutes a frame, even with, as Liam says, the kind of try counts and the scene scale that we're working at. It's massively beneficial for us, and hopefully we're just going to get faster and faster.
Yeah, we keep looking at reducing that time as much as we can, because the more art we can produce, the better we can get, and the more renders we can produce as well. It means we can retouch them together and make our images even more beautiful than what we have.
So what do we produce? We produce as photorealistic as we can get quality images and videos for automotive manufacturers. We mainly work in the US market, so for US advertising agencies, and we are abroad the entire range of asset creation. We're making billboards, we make website imagery, we make those little configurator build thingies when you want to make your favorite car. And recently we have moved into the broadcast space. So we are now creating minutes long cuts of footage that are given out to American dealership networks to create their television adverts. And I think last month we were in a Super Bowl advert. So we're going up and up. I don't really know what the aim is next year, but we've kind of achieved everything I wanted to achieve. So as Liam says, why CG, and why do we use the kind of technology we do in our kind of workspace and marketing space? For us, really, it's about flexibility. We can take a manufacturer's data and create a wealth of assets for them in a relatively fast time scale, and in comparison to photography and videography, a relatively low cost. So for us, really, we are looking to provide our clients with a fast, seamless workflow that isn't painful for them in any regard. And in 3 years' time, they could turn around and say, oh, remember that project you did? We just want to update the car, or we'd like to move some mountains or change the sky. That's why we push for CG as much as possible in all of our jobs. 98% of our jobs, I would say now, are involved with CG, whether it's, as I said, video, stills, or sort of configurator-esque website stuff that we're now starting to create. These are a couple of images that we worked on. The top level, you can see that's the McLaren F1 car from, I think, 2017, I want to say. Shot in studio, and we created the backgrounds. And then the alternative is the images you can see below. You see this is a campaign for Ford, their vehicle in the center, the Mustang Mach-E. These were shot, the backplates were shot here on location in South Africa. And then the outermost and central vehicle were added in CG. Notice a couple of shots from a full campaign that we created for Ford. Go next. We can. Oh, is this rendering? This might be quite loud. I'm not 100% sure how loud it's going to be. So we've now moved. Big shift into Unreal Engine for us. Creating stills, Max is fine. It will render in an hour, and that's great. But for us, making videos is now where we want to be. It's more enjoyable. It's more artistic. There's a lot more scope for creativity, we found. So what you see here is all inside Unreal Engine. Vehicles animated inside Max, and then taken into Unreal, lit, environment created, rendered, all in Path Tracer. And yeah, we took this to America last year, showed our clients, they loved it. They're looking to buy some of this now with their vehicles. So yeah, really just kind of a showcase of sort of level that we're playing at now. This environment, just kind of touch on our workflow, things like that. This environment's about 2 kilometers in length, the road. We are finding that we can create these kind of vast expanses very quickly, film in them, and you know, this whole advert here was created in a matter of weeks. So yeah, that's really where we're using Unreal Engine to push ourselves further on in terms of asset and scene creation.
With this sort of work as well, what we're trying to do is develop our workflow to match real life situations. So how cameras will move and how light will react in a car. So we are creating softwares that will create us a fake boom arm, which is used in real industry for filming these cars in real life. And it just gives us that natural human error feel that makes it look more realistic than smooth, nice, intricate curves into cameras. Because in real life, you're not going to get that. You're going to get jitters. And that's what we're trying to put into our work, is the imperfections to make it perfect for the client.
Mm.
And something to add with us going down this CG route, especially with clients, is a lot of clients work with red-coded cars, which is stuff that's never released. It could be vehicles coming from 2025, 2027, and they don't want these cars on the road because anyone could take a picture of them and it ruins the whole release and advertising of that vehicle. So by putting it in CG, they don't have that loss at all. They don't have any worries of any files disappearing or anyone capturing that car just driving down the road. So by going down this avenue, which a lot more clients are doing and bringing us more work, it's bringing safety to them and also more work and experience to us.
And just Liam touched on the cameras there. Every camera here was effectively created with an Xbox controller. We found it was the quickest and easiest way to get people used to kind of moving the camera around in Unreal. We just hook up an Xbox controller and fly it around, which was a lot of fun. We call it work, but really, we do try and have some fun with that.
Very good.
Yeah, exactly. How do I stop this? There we go. Oh, hello. Oh, there you go. So yeah, just a couple of stills. This is something that we're looking to, well, our clients are looking to buy from us and we're looking to sell, really, is this idea of asset packs, effectively. You know, we take a client's brief, we would make them, let's say, a 30-second long image, 30-second long video, and then they turn around and say, oh, and can we have 8 marketing stills? Yes, sure, absolutely. It really is not very difficult for us to turn around and create a bank of assets for them from one environment creation project for us. Is this Porsche or Genesis? Genesis. So this is, oh, might be loud. There we go. So this, it's a little bit slower, but this is a kind of 1-minute cut that we made of a 6-minute video package that we created for Genesis last year. This is our snow running footage. So a little bit slower, a little bit more sedate, but this is what the dealership network would take and cut together to make their own commercials in the US, effectively. This was a big project and quite a lot of fun to try and get rendering, but ultimately, you know, what you're looking at probably 1 billion tries in this scene, and I think over 1 billion in this kind of snowy landscape one. Unreal seems to handle it, and it's really a lot of fun for us to create. Again, this was made in a similar way that we created the Range Rover scene, so camera controlled with an Xbox controller, and yeah, just really had a lot of fun finding shots and lighting and making something really nice. The interiors you can see, so that's what it was right at the start, was, there you go, there's another one. That was our kind of first foray into shooting green screen in what was effectively a live production. So the actor and the hand are real life people. It's strange to say that. It was a man called Jonathan. We shot him on a green screen and rendered CG car around him effectively, which is something that worked really well. It was a bit of a learning process, but the client is really happy, and we're going to look to be doing more of that going forward.
Yeah, by using more green screen stuff as well, it's helped us expand into what Unreal can really do. So by filming real life and CG at the same time, what we have to do is connect a Blackmagic camera, which is a 6K camera, that as it moves, the Unreal camera will also move at the exact same time, and it will basically allow us to overlay those images and cut out any green screen and make it work within CG. And it just adds that little bit extra realism to our work, where if you use a meta-human or a character that you've made, you get the little bits of clay look. So it really helps with the end result.
Very much getting used to the system. Yeah, so again, a couple of stills just taken from that video. So this, oh, I just uploaded it. Hold on, let me finish. Will this loop? Will this be high quality? Okay. Again, second to last video. This was effectively a showcase for us to kind of take Unreal to our clients and let them have a bit of a play around. We made a 1 minute long animation with this Porsche model, and then took the video to Los Angeles to some of our agencies we work with, showed them it, wowed them with it, and then gave them the Xbox controller and let them kind of fly around the scene and make their own camera moves. I wouldn't show you their results because it's a little bit of a trained art, but they had a lot of fun in doing it. And again, it really is just showing to them the level of ease in creating these animations for their clients.
And just at the end of this video, it really does show you the ability that we can just swap out a color in an instant for a client. And doing that on shoot is, you'd have to change the whole car. It's a lot more effort, and just showing this to client and the ability just to swap out the color in a minute, or the plastic or anything, it just really sells them the idea of the way the world is really going and how we are developing with it, and how we really stand out to other CG companies and the industry, really.
Do
you have to minimize?
I have to minimize. So that's kind of the more, you don't want to say, kind of flashy environment work that we do.
You can say.
The other side of our asset creation is, you don't want to say, a little bit more informatic. We are often tasked with creating these infographic, how do technologies work videos, which is what you can see below for the Toyota Mirai, which is a hydrogen-based car. And really, this is it's the other side of our workflow, effectively. You can see at the top as well, we've got these kind of configurator style studio shots. We make a bank of these every year for Toyota, and that is to showcase every trim level and every color of the vehicles. And it's a lot more of a prescriptive exercise in getting your lighting working for every vehicle, getting your animations working for every vehicle, building a kind of systemic platform that can be grown across Toyota's range. That is really where Liam has found his niche, and
yeah,
Liam is the god of doing this at Go Digital.
Yeah, so the two top images are called turntables, colorizers, and it's basically showcasing the different levels of grade you can buy the car at. So you can swap out what you need, and it will also showcase color. So the more challenging side of this work is that, as it is a 360 of the car, you need the lighting and the color to be sitting consistently around it, so you don't get any flickers and color changes within it. And clients do need color accuracy, because if you're going to buy a car and it's not coming in that shade of orange, you're not going to be very happy. So you really have to hone in on these smaller aspects of the cars. And it's not as beautiful as the city shots and everything, but there's still a lot more work that goes into it and a lot more development needed.
Yeah, it serves a purpose, doesn't it? I think that's the biggest part of it.
It really does.
Our clients. So in terms of kind of still imagery, as I touched on earlier, we are often asked to take a video environment that we have created and utilize it across different platforms. It might well be that a client has forgotten to shoot a car, or they can't get a car in a certain location. That's where they turn to us to create these locations fully in Unreal, and to have what we've coined a virtual photo shoot with them. So we'll get on a screen share, and over a couple of days, find the camera angles, find the lighting, and create the imagery that they can't get in real life. As I say, whether that's because of location issues, or, as Liam touched on earlier, security issues of the car not wanting to be seen out in public. But it can also be from a cost perspective. If they've paid all that money to have a video environment created, why not get some stills as well? Create a homogeneous advertising platform. And I think in a little bit, we will dive into this scene in Unreal, fly around and just kind of show our process for getting images and sort of creative workflow.
Right. Well, also by doing these sort of beauty images, as James said about the code reds of classification of cars, is the ability to give client anything is crazy. So they can turn around to us and say, we want to shoot in South Africa today. And we can quickly build a scene and work around that. It's not that they are stuck within LA or around that area. Is they have any option to go in the world that they want to go in, and we can give that to them. So we really open the vast variety to our clients, and Unreal is opening that up to us as well, because we can use such things as, well, even Google Maps helps. So anything with height maps and everything will help us build these environments to be realistic, and even in geolocations that the client picks.
So our journey, and I think really we're doing a talk on vehicle art, but as a company, it's more creating art with vehicles. We've come from very early on a purely photography workflow, which was going on shoot, photograph, or assisting photographers in photographing and then retouching vehicles, which is an example that is bottom left with the brown pickup truck. We then moved into doing CG just vehicles, where photographers would shoot backplates and HDRI domes, and we would place the car in that backplate using the dome for lighting. But really then we started to see the benefits of full CGI and kind of pushing the flexibility and that workflow to benefit our client in a number of ways. An example of that can be seen on the top, which is the Chevrolet Corvette image. 2 road cars and 2 race cars. At this point, that race car was not built and the road car hadn't even been announced yet. So none of this would have been available to shoot conventionally. So we created a racetrack environment for our client and then took the supply data and made some imagery for them. It was incredibly flexible. You know, that blue paint on the ground that went through 4 rounds of different colors. But it means that we can offer our clients that flexibility. What we're getting towards now is virtual production and moving into human interaction in our Unreal Engine scenes and in our videos that we create. So bottom right, that is a CG background and CG car, but she is real. And she was shot with the scene running in the background so that we could accurately reflect and light her. And then we rendered the shots out after the fact and placed them in behind. And that's really where we're starting to push our workflow, is to get real people integrated into our CG environments.
Yeah, and I think we kind of want to base on, with all of this stuff, really how we go and get into this industry. As James said at the start, I am from Staff's Uni and I did games art. I was a vehicle artist. I very much wanted to go into vehicle art, and at GradX I met the CEO of this company. He really opened my eyes to a different avenue that I could go down that wasn't just games, but I could still use the skills that I had learned at university. Coming into the industry really with Unreal knowledge and Max knowledge, it really pushed my ability to learn and change the way I work and really create so much more realism within my work. Like, it's really boosted my skills and development, and it's an avenue a lot of people don't know about. If you had asked me in my second year of university, oh, where do you think you will be after uni? I would never have said a CG artist, because I'd never had a clue. But it's kind of why we're here today, to kind of show you that we are an option and we are here and this is what we do. And it might not be the same as games, but it still follows the same sets of softwares and rules and development that you will use within games. And it's just kind of giving you an insight of a different path that you could take.
Just with no try-count limit.
Yeah, try-count limit is crazy.
So I think we'll touch on questions in a little bit.
It's going to lag for a minute.
It is going to lag for a second. But here with our little flamingo friend, we did just want to kind of showcase our sort of scale of environment that we create and the level at which we create them.
If it's going to let you fly.
Will it let me fly? As I said, we build to not much for try-count limit, so our scenes are sometimes a little bit heavy.
It was all right earlier.
It was okay earlier, but every good presentation has technical difficulties. So the ask for these was to effectively create an architectural visualization platform and then place this Genesis vehicle inside and create some imagery and videos from it. Our clients are now struggling to shoot at these type of houses. They are becoming prohibitively expensive, and it is really just becoming a lot of hassle for them. So we're always looking to make our clients' lives easier, and this for us was a showcase for that. So one of our, and there we go. Watch me fly around. There we go. Hold on, where's my car? There we go. We're back. One of our CG artists at Curve actually trained as an architect, which has a multitude of benefits, but mainly he designed this house, created it roughly from something he'd had in his mind for a long time. And we kind of said, right, give us a cool house and off you go. So he gave us a cool house. And then we took that house and placed it, as Liam says, effectively over Google Maps Los Angeles. This is a bit of a new thing for us to play around in, but this is cesium. We're taking Google Maps tiles and placing them inside Unreal just to, make our landscapes bigger, make our lives easier. Making all of this ourselves would take quite a while. But it's a hell of a lot easier to just make it with what Unreal gives you. As you can see, the kind of stuff we're creating, and I assume, having not done it myself, this is not a million miles away from kind of a game asset workflow, but we are, where's my camera?
I think it's...
There she is. We're looking to create a lot of different shots using our environment, whether that's through camera changes, let me see if I've got another here. Or lighting changes, or different placement of foliage and props, like our little flamingo friend in the pool, to really make a nice bank of imagery that showcases the car how the client wants. In terms of model and tri-count, as Liam touched on, we aren't limited. This is CAD provided directly from the manufacturer. We don't do anything with it other than material it, simply to keep it exactly how the manufacturer wants. But sort of to touch on the technical side, really go into the nitty gritty. Where's wireframe? There it is. There we go. So it's all mesh. I think this seat itself is over 100,000 tries. It does not concern us. We found that we can just kind of keep throwing tries at Unreal and it won't really crash that much, which is okay. It was probably a little bit of a mindset shift for you, Liam, wasn't it? But
yeah, my mind wanted to optimize everything when I first joined, very much in that state of work. But just from looking at the interior, you can really see how much materials can change an image. And that's something I did learn at university. That's going to be very sparkly.
No, sorry, hold on. Say what we were talking about.
Something I did learn at university was you can make a great model, but if you can't make great textures, your model will lose. And just by us developing textures and the way our cars look through textures and materials, we can create this very much realistic reality that we live in. It is very crazy, and the try count still shocks me.
Yeah, we're looking to get, not necessarily move away from our automotive sector, but to kind of use it and push up further. So we're looking now into architectural visualization, aerospace work with different clients of ours, because the building blocks are all the same, effectively. It's kind of just how you put them together to get different outputs. So yeah, that's our little house in the hills in Los Angeles.
And it's really not a big environment if you don't take into account the Google Maps. It is very small, but the amount of images we can develop from this is crazy. So, yeah.
So yeah, I think to open the floor up to anyone, does anyone have any questions about our workflow, about the company, about Liam and I, or really just about how we're doing things a little bit differently compared to what most people probably think of vehicle art?
So we've got a very sort of a more general question within the comments from George, who's asking, I'm an aspiring vehicle artist, be that games or CG. What would you recommend having on a portfolio? I've done a few realistic vehicles and vehicle-related props, and they're curious as to what else they might want to add.
Good question. I think from our side, we would be looking at how you can take the assets that you create and make different assets from that. So let's say you take a realistic vehicle. What would you do with that? Would you place it in a studio and create, lovely kind of launch imagery for a brand? Or could you look at creating a small scale environment and creating, a 15-second video perhaps that showcases the key features of the vehicle? Do you take it a step further? Do you, let's say it's a performance vehicle. Could you create a small racetrack environment or a little drag strip perhaps, and, use it to showcase the performance features of that car? For us, really, we love to see people take what they make and then get creative with it. And then once they've got creative with it, pivot and create something entirely different. To take a vehicle that you make and create 5 or 6 studio shots and make it really sexy, and really sell it. And then to take that exact same asset into a small racetrack and, you make a 10-second, very fast cut animation with it. That would be fantastic, to see the creativity that someone has behind the reason for themselves making that vehicle. That's really what we strive to see, because it shows us that, that kind of wide berth of knowledge and excitement in our industry. We do so many different things in so many different ways. You know, as Liam says, we do studio work, we do visualizers, we create full house models, and then we make animations from it, and we put cars in snowy mountains. We have such a wide breadth of asset creation that I think that's really what we'd like to see, is taking your asset and getting creative with it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you see a lot of people make these beautiful assets, and they are amazing. There's a lot of amazing 3D artists out there. But when you put it in one of the Unreal generic, like the seaside parking lot or something like that, it doesn't let it down, because you can still really make your art look beautiful with lighting and everything, but showing your creative side of, I have this vehicle, I made this vehicle, and now I'm going to chuck it into something that no one's ever seen before because it's my idea. It really shows to us and to a client of how creative you can be, and the mindset that you have, that you're not just going to go down the same route as everyone else, and you're going to be very open to exploring new avenues. And it really makes you stand out a lot more.
I think as well, it's always good to see how people create their own scenes. You know, for instance, if you are really adept at vehicle art and modeling, and you think, oh, I'm not an environment artist, I can't create an environment. The image that you have top right, with the 5 forwards, I look at that and I think that's maybe 20 different Megascan materials and about 3 or 4 hours worth of environment modeling. It's taking the skills you have in vehicle art and pivoting that we really find interesting, and we really like to see people have creative solutions to problems, or, you know, creative answers to briefs. So I think that's quite a roundabout way of saying, make your vehicles great, put it in a scene that'll be even greater,
But make it your own.
But make it your own if you can.
Yeah.
So I've got a question for Liam. Admiring some of the paintwork and some of the lighting and some of the earlier videos that you had there, how does the approach for vehicle shaders, particularly for paint, alter from what you're used to with game art into the new CG realm that you're working in?
So I think when I was looking at it on more of a game art perspective, I wasn't thinking about the realistic features of paint. So going down that, I was trying to make it look pretty within roughness and everything, but not really thinking about it of the concepts of paint, of like clear coat and flakes and everything on that perspective. So coming into it as CG and having the ability to go down more of the photorealistic route, and studying them sort of variables that I need, it's really helped like develop that sort of look that we go for and that I need within my work. So I feel like within games, I was more worried about try counts and resolutions of texture maps and everything. But in CG, I have the less restrictions and more ability to throw more at it. Yeah.
So with those new limits, new boundaries that you can push, what how has your approach changed then to paints?
That's a good question. I'm thinking about it.
I'll jump in if you'd like. I think the big part for us is what Liam's learned kind of comes from what I myself learned in working offline renderers in Max and V-Ray, which is looking at how a paint is made in an automotive sense, starting with a base layer, then a primer, then a color, then a clear coat. I can create all of those in V-Ray, and pivoting and taking that into a game engine scenario effectively means not looking at screen space lighting, not looking at screen space reflections. We throw absolutely everything at it, a scene, and kind of let the paint do what it does. We don't worry about things like frames per second because it simply doesn't affect us. So we look to make that paint look as close to real life as possible. And, you know, we're doing that with multiple material layers. We're doing that, as Liam says, not worrying about texture resolution. You know, we'll use a 16K flake map if we need to get something looking really good. And then, yeah, it's really building paints as they work in the real world, and then looking at how it interacts in Unreal and kind of finessing it from there is what I kind of look at as a fun. You the same, Liam?
Yeah.
My graphics card squealed when you said 16K flake map.
We've got, just to touch on that, we have 35 render machines. Each of them has a 4090 in it, and they crash constantly.
Yeah.
It's quite funny. I've just sent Rob a link to Liam's first car that you made for me all those years ago, and I can confirm Liam's materials have moved on significantly from the diffuse map that he plugged straight in and didn't turn on the clear coat shader.
He's done you dirty there, Liam.
To be fair, the car model's ace. I'm sure that scored you well. It's quite apparent the materials came very late, but no, it's awesome. Yeah. I'll stop ribbing Liam and tormenting about work that he did 4 years ago or whatever it was. It was a great skyline though. I enjoyed it. Yeah, so we teach a lot of, so I've been teaching configurators and stuff here for a while, as well as ArchViz and kind of asset work, moving away a little bit from games and actually looking into kind of the space that you guys are in and a few other studios that I won't mention on this call because that'd be weird. But one of the things I wanted to ask about was animations and stuff and rigs. Are you guys control rig for a lot of the stuff you're doing now, or are you still doing your animations in a DCC?
We, for a time, worked with control rigs. We found that we ran into an issue which, if you were playing it as a game, it wouldn't be a problem at all. But we were rendering out and noticing that the car was effectively never fully sat on the road. It was either an inch below or an inch above. And we could not seem to get Unreal's collision model to be granular enough with the level of tri count we're working out with our roads to read effectively. So we tried it for a time, and now we have gone back to a DCC. We use a plugin in Max, and I think they have one for Maya as well, which is called Craft Director. Which works on a physically based system. You know, you can pipe in vehicle weight, spring rates, and things like that, and then drive that vehicle either autonomously following a spline with a keyboard, with a controller if you'd like, and then we hook up all of our CAD data to it. It's not ideal. Our preferred, and what we're going to be really investing some time in this year, is to be animating fully inside Unreal. It will give us a lot of control and a lot, you know, a very fast turnaround of animation changes with our client. Especially often we animate cameras directly with our client. They're sat side by side with us. If we can then animate the car side by side with them as well, it would be perfect. Our issue seems to be our kind of model resolution at the moment.
As James said, we're trying to dabble a bit more into other like solutions for this. And we are, well, for myself and my side of it, I am looking a bit more into control rigs, but very simple when it's not big movements that is compared to anything else that we film. So they're very different situations for what we need them for, but it all depends really on what the job is. And for the majority of our jobs, it's a lot of work, and using Maxcraft licenses and stuff like that helps a lot more and gives us a lot more realism, even in the bumps in the road.
Yeah, so perhaps more useful for posing rather than full-on animation at the moment. Is that kind of where you find yourselves?
Absolutely. That's what you've been kind of doing this past month, haven't you? In creating the assets, you can see top left and top right. The new ask is for things like wheel turn and things like that this year.
Turns and body rolls.
Small
driving animations.
And for, you know, for smaller level stuff like that on a studio floor is perfect. But yeah, it is something that we are going to invest some more time into this year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we are really looking to use Unreal start to finish as much as we can and move away from kind of Max or Maya DCC work.
So when you're looking at portfolios for students doing vehicle art, with a lot of the pieces of work that you do currently, what are the normal things that you see and you think, right, that's a glowing error? I hate seeing it, but you see it in portfolios, and how can we bring attention to vehicle artists that are in this call right now to say, look, this is something that we don't want to see in portfolios. We talk a lot about what we want to see, but what don't you want to see? What's the bad things that you come across?
I've had one, and I think I saw it's sometimes in portfolios, and I saw it when I did GradX last year, judging it, was a lot of students miss out on double-sided materials. It's very, very easy just to switch on, and from not doing it, it just means you can see through the rear side of your mesh, and you can just see straight to like gravel or ground or sky, and it just makes it look not realistic. And it's quite simple. It's just open material, search double-sided material, and just turn both tick boxes on, and it just makes a huge difference for myself.
I agree. I think from what I look for is considered lighting. I think vehicle art especially, you get people that can model incredibly well and create shaders and textures very well. They're 2 out of the 3 things to a perfect image, really. And I think considered lighting is the one people often miss out on. If all you did was go into a WH Smith, buy an auto car, and just look at how a photographer lights for a certain type of shot, and then for each render you create, just spend 10 minutes just kind of looking to accentuate the lines of the car or truck or whatever vehicle you're creating, to create a beauty render, to make something really pop as an image and pop off the page. So, you take the Supra top right, there's considered lighting for that doesn't work for the kind of large SUV that you have top left. So it does require a little bit of time spent dependent on the vehicle, but it really goes a very long way to creating a really nice image. Lighting is what we spend most of our time on, because it is what makes the car look best, and that's what we are kind of in the market of.
Yeah, and basing on that is you can look at a lot of our still images and think, well, the lighting's really, really, really good on it. But we're not going to get that in one pass. We can sit here and have 3 to 4 passes of lighting, just hitting the rear of the vehicle, hitting the headlight, making everything pop. But you use After Effects for animations or Photoshop afterwards just to piece them all together to make your image look beautiful. So you don't have to hit it all in one shot. And that was my error of thinking at university when I was trying to throw everything at it at once, where you can just do a couple bits at a time, try and hit the mother load in one, but pick out your details just a bit at a time, and it will make your image so much better.
So with that in mind, how does a student that's looking to put a vehicle art portfolio together begin to light a vehicle correctly? Because not many necessarily take all a fantastic amount of time in doing so. A lot of the prep and work that goes into these sorts of assets is really sort of front loaded for them, and when they get to this age, sometimes, at least in my experiences, they've not got a lot of time left in some of their deadlines. How can they prepare to be as successful as possible?
I think the best place to start is to create a simple studio lighting setup, roughly based on how a photographer would work. If you look at somewhere like Junction 11 or Calvert Studios, for example, you can find images of their setups online. Effectively, it's a big white room that they then use to create kind of that overall global illumination around the car. That gives a good look and a good showcase of the car in the whole as such. From there, I would look at placing maybe 2 or 3 large rectangular lights or spotlights that give you kind of the bulk of your line. So top left with the Toyota Sequoia SUV, you can see there, that is one very big rectangular light over the top of it. Is it? Yes. It's one big, call it a scrim, one big rectangular light. And you can see that it's giving us every line inside of that car, every line on the bonnet. There's a couple of additional lights for hitting the wheels and tires. But I think if all you started with was a kind of a large white circular room and a big rectangular top light, that's going to get you 80% of the way there to a studio lighting scenario that you can see top left. And often that's what showcases the car the best. If you were to be placing it in environments, I would say, again, less is more. One big light over the top of it is going to do a hell of a lot more than 10, 15 small lights trying to get every little bit perfect. You're going to be fighting an uphill battle there.
Yeah, you don't really want to be throwing lots and lots of light at it, because cars are very simple, not simple, but in their shapes, they're looking for a direct sort of source of light. And if you can find it's perfect, but when you start throwing more and more at it, you're going to start getting lines and weird shapes and duplicating of highlights within your cars.
Right.
And that's when it starts looking wrong. You can also, a bit more of a tip is to look at lighting channels. I didn't really do anything till third year at university with lighting channels, but if you learn about them, you can use them in such a way that you can light bumpers and wheels and glass all in such a different way, and you don't have to worry about it ruining your environment. You don't want to throw a big light that's going to create you a nice shoulder on your car if your floor of your environment is going to be completely blown out. So using them lighting channels makes a huge difference.
I think if you can see the image here that I've got on screen of this beautiful Bizzarini, this is kind of what I'm talking about. It's a big white room, and yeah, there's a lot of different pieces of equipment, but the main thing lighting that car is this big old bit of fabric that they're bouncing a light up into. That's giving them a lot of their shape and a lot of definition on the car.
I'm loving the fact that you've just prefaced my preparing your cars for render lesson that I'm doing in about 5 weeks' time with pretty much exactly as the slides go. So that was wonderful. We hadn't pre-planned that, honest.
So now I'm going to slightly pivot the question in terms of conversation. You mentioned earlier on that you work a lot of the time now with CAD files and from the manufacturer. Now, with students not necessarily having access to that kind of thing, how can they prepare themselves to be able to utilize those kinds of files or those kinds of workflow in preparation for a role like you have at Curve?
I think for us, really, it's in terms of streamlining. If you are creating a vehicle model, pivot at 0, 0, place it in the center of your world. Little things like that really go a long way into making a file easy to use. Things like if you're creating a vehicle for animation, that wheel needs to have its pivot centered around the hubcap. We often find when we get files from clients, we have to do a lot of additional work to make that vehicle animation ready, let's say. And it's annoying if they all came in and set up how we need it, it would be perfect. So yeah, I think that for us is a very important part, seeing people create workable files, things like using layers in Max or using correct folder structure, correct naming annotation. It makes the moving of files around so much easier than having box 028 and box 029 and box 030, which I'm incredibly guilty of.
It reminds me of my uni days. I didn't name anything at uni, and coming to work now, if you have to pick up someone else's file, if I do have to pick up James's file and there's box 28 in it, I don't have a clue what that is. And naming conventions is crazy and so important. And it really helps, just especially now you're modeling for your portfolios and for yourself. When you go into an industry, and this industry, we all work together and we all help each other, and we have to understand each other's work. So getting that sort of grained into you now it's going to help you down the line.
I think as well, touching on kind of the file transfer at scene usage, things like dimensions, working to exact scale, working to centimeters or millimeters, whichever your choice is. Things, we touched on earlier, what jumps out about people's portfolio, it's when cars are slightly not right. When the wheels are an inch too big, and little things like that, it all adds up. So work to exact centimeter values, put your car at 0, 0, name your objects and materials for what they are, not just, material 8 or whatever. Things like that, set your stall out to make a very usable file that if any of us were to pick up, we'd be very happy.
But it's also, as James has said, your wheels not being like an inch too big. It sounds crazy. And if I was still at university and you said to me now, I would have think it's crazy, you wouldn't notice. But I sent files to a client the other day and she turned around to me and said, your wheel's off by a centimetre. And I'm like, I don't know how you see it, but you do, because it's when you're looking at these cars every day in your own work, you will notice these little things, and it's them imperfections that you really need to nail down.
Just to touch on working with CAD in scene as well, we often find that Unreal doesn't like a lot of tiny files. So one of our processes is that everything with the same material that doesn't need to move all gets attached together. We've created a script that ingests a model in Maya to do that. So we have all the car paint on one object. We'll have all of our clear glass on another object, all the roof headlining and things like that.
Makes your life easier.
Makes your life a lot easier. So if you are working with, objects that can handle that, or, perhaps being on different UDIM tiles, or you've got enough space in your UV to do it, then yeah, you can find that you can chuck more tries at something and Unreal will deal with it as long as it's not in 1,000 tiny objects. But yeah, just to touch on things like vehicle naming, GV80 frosted glass, GV80 headliner, GV80 icons white.
Very easy to read. It's
very easy to read. It makes working with the file very fast, and it makes the file very editable.
Yeah.
Just on that one then, so obviously you're working with huge try counts, and most folks that are going to be watching this from inside staffs anyway will be sat here going, well, if I try that with an FBX, Unreal's going to shout at me. Are you guys USD or are you data smiths? What's your pathway for that data?
We use data smiths and FBXs, so depending on the situation, mainly for animations, it's a data smith. But for my sort of still images that I do, I am just using FBXs. But again, I'm combining every single piece that I need as one material. So when we do come to material, instead of having our cars usually come in, like 20,000 parts?
Yeah.
I usually end up about 40, 50, because I'm just combining everything together, and Unreal's managing it a lot better. So just being able to minimize the amount of geometry you have minus try count.
So yeah, we do data smiths, our main kind of transfer protocol, simply because it leaves pivot points where they are, which for us is really helpful going straight from animation into Unreal. But datasmith effectively is just a wrapper for lots of little FBX imports, which, I think you find Unreal, if you attach a lot of objects together, it can take a lot more tries than you think.
It is often the sub-object memory that causes the bottleneck with that. So no, it's cool. It's good to just sort of. We had a Jaguar Land Rover in with their factory team, and they were talking heavily about moving almost entirely to USD formats and being able to bounce around between 20 or 30 different packages that they're working in with clients and themselves and external folks. So yeah, interesting to see where the kind of comparisons are.
So next question. I was gonna. Sorry.
Sorry. If students do want to practice, it's not with CAD data, but more high poly data, there is a lot of solutions on like Sketchfab and websites like that, which some of them are free, some of them do cost, unfortunately. But we do have an intern at the minute that did come in with data, with CAD data that he found off Sketchfab, and it just gave him the ability to show us that he can work with this sort of data that we use. So even if you just take that data and practice with it, and just in your own time practice with lighting, it just shows your ability of adapting.
So the next thing I was going to do is pivot to something that you mentioned a little earlier on, and that was about materials and the management of them. So considering a expected amount of UV space per game versus what you have for the productions that you're coming out with, what students should they be working with for game? What is the right level of detail? So what kind of amount of texture maps is expected for game, and which are expected for the productions like yours?
I think a rule of thumb that we have, and this, I do not come from a games background, so Liam, please chime in when you would like, is that whatever resolution your final output is going to be, work at a maximum texture size that is double that. So if we know that our final output needs to be in 4K, we will work to 8K textures for our most important assets. If it's going to be 1080p, we'll work for a maximum 4K. It's simply so that we can keep, visual fidelity very high without running out of memory immediately. We don't often use 8K textures unless it is necessary. If we know our road is always going to be motion blurred, then a 2048 texture will be absolutely fine because it's always going to be moving. But if we're focusing on our car paint for a lot of the shots, as we often are, an 8K, maybe even a 16K texture will be necessary for that. We try to balance it in that as things are further away from camera, if we have background mountings, they might be at 1024 and we can get away with it. But that's from kind of I don't care about frames per second point of view. So, Liam, if you want to chime in from the 60 FPS is the minimum.
Well, from games, we would unwrap a vehicle to certain texture sheets. So we would kind of make sure that if we only had a 4K texture, we would split it up into 4 2K ones. And that's for games. But here, it doesn't really abide to us. So when we are texturing a car, and as well, a positive thing for my side of it all is that we're not unwrapping. So most of our vehicles have tiling textures on them. So being able to just use them textures to the highest quality they can without having to spare time on unwrapping is just a benefit, really. It's just so much easier.
So the leather for this, for instance, is each map for it is 4K. I think there's 3 maps in there. As Liam said, they come already UV'd from client, but we're using 4K textures here because we did some interior shots with this vehicle and we needed high resolution textures. For something like the books up in there, 512 would suffice. I think for us, really, the most important part of our workflow is the car. So if you've only got room on your GPU for 10 8K textures, spend them on the car.
Yeah, spend them on an important asset.
So for anybody that's wanting to do UVs for cars, you mentioned UDIM tile workflow earlier on. Is this something that you would expect to see within a portfolio, or are you simply okay with sort of bespoke texture maps for individual parts of a vehicle? What kind of attitude do you have towards that?
I think if someone showed us a car utilizing UDIM tiles, I'd be very impressed, because I think it would, and it's the same thing, with RGBA texture packing. That is someone who is considering the use case of their asset that they're creating. It might not actually be used, but for someone to take the extra amount of time, to get correct UDIM tile sorted, it's very impressive. For really big stuff, yeah, fine, individual unique UVs, not a problem. But yeah, for someone to spend the time and to consider doing that, I think that really shows they're going the extra mile with their asset creation. I think that's really impressive.
Yeah, it makes them stand out to us because we show that they're dedicated, well, not dedicated, but they're very into what they do and they want it to be correct.
Yeah.
So if you were to see that sort of workflow, how do you impress even more? What kind of layout are you expecting? Certain parts of a vehicle on one, certain parts on another? How would you split them up?
I would split them up in using your car paint. I'd have the car paint on its own tile. I think it's such an important, part of what we do, and it's the thing the client and every viewer of the asset is going to look at the most. Things like wheels, and if we were to take this Genesis that we have on screen right now, these wheels are huge. They matter a lot to the car. So I would expect to see them, all four of those, or one of those with the same UV over the top. That and a tire perhaps on another tile, because it matters so much to the car. Then we start to get a little bit more granular. Something like this grille, if it were to require, it's a chrome, but if it were to require, let's say, brushed metal, and they need to all be perfect, that could take up half a tile. And the other metals, could take up the other half, because they're slightly smaller and they matter a bit less. We always have to focus on the face of the car, which is what you're seeing here, full face on. The rear, the car paint, the wheels, and the badging. I would say any kind of model or asset in those areas needs to be given a lot of room on a UV tile, just so that we can get the most resolution out of it. Do you agree?
I do agree.
Yeah. When it comes to the interior, we take this interior, the leather or the seating matters a lot. Things like seats and dash, again, same thing. They matter a lot. We would need a lot of resolution in those. Steering wheel as well. We're always asked to do shots like this, to see the full binnacle, see what the driver would see, our client always says. So that matters a lot. Things like the headliner, yeah, you can probably get away with a bit less resolution. Things like the floor of the boot, we probably don't need a lot of space in that.
Yeah.
So I think really, for us, it's looking at what would the client want. Well, they want their car paint to look really nice and sexy, and they want their badging to look really nice and sexy, and they want where the driver sits to look really nice and sexy. So start there, and then work your way out.
Do you have any tips for the dials, anything electrical with inside interiors? I know this is sort of something that tends to be left to later on in projects, or perhaps it doesn't even actually anybody get to it, or where do you look for reference for it? I noticed that this is a question I get all the time. So is there anything, any information that you can give regarding that?
Sure. I would say always use an emissive for, anything that's, a sort of screen or anything like that. I would not put it in the diffuse. It doesn't really work as well. I think the other thing I'd say is take a good look at how much these things actually illuminate. People often have them way too bright. Whereas if you were actually sat in this vehicle, the HMI that you can see here is insanely bright, far too bright. These things they don't really need to be the focus as such of the vehicle. They need to be a supporting act. So don't have them absolutely blowing out on screen. In terms of finding them, I am not going to be of much help. These have always been supplied to me. But Liam, have you had any experience with sort of finding these?
Not for high resolution ones, but using...
Sorry, I've put you on the spot here, haven't I, with this one?
Using like reference such as YouTube, or like say if you're working for an older car, there is a lot more imagery around. And even if you're thinking about it, you can use stuff like Auto Trader, because they will focus on dashboards and everything like this. And then using Photoshop to take that image, cut out everything that you don't need and flatten it, will give you the ability to UV that onto a dash.
I think the other thing as well is, especially for older cars with kind of conventional needles, I'm getting really granular now. When they light up, the thing itself does not light up. There's an LED at the bottom of it that lights up. That's getting very specific, but to touch on something, that is exactly how daytime running lights work. Daytime running lights are often just an LED at the end of a tube. The tube itself is just glass.
Yeah.
It's little considerations like that, looking at it and thinking, how would the manufacturer actually create this? So yeah, the dial of or the needle of a dial is really, really getting quite far down the process, but that whole thing doesn't illuminate. It's just putting an emissive material on it. It's going to feel a little bit strange. If you can do something like bake a curvature map and use that to drive an emissive, that's getting creative, and that's getting the model to actually look much closer to how it looks in real life.
And that's also getting our attention, because by doing that, you're really showing us that you have an understanding of that car and how the lights work and how a manufacturer will use LEDs to make their cars like needles and stuff glow. So having that understanding and showing us that you have that understanding is a key part of standing out.
There's observational skills, isn't it? That ability to kind of look at your source material and break it down to more than just object and color.
Exactly.
It's the research within it, because we do a lot of research on just making these cars look correct. So if we're doing it here and you're trying to get in our industry, we kind of expect you to be doing it by yourself.
So just to wrap up then, what is the most unique skill that a student could bring to you that you need right now?
Thinking. I'm not just going
I'm
to
thinking.
In coffee making skills?
I've got that covered, don't worry. I think from my side, looking at the team as a whole, it's someone that can kind of... It's a bit of everything, which is really hard, but strangely, it's an FX artist, weirdly. But we have to look at that in a vehicle sense. So it's someone who's really interested in making things like, snow effects on tires and on the front of a vehicle, mud splashing outside, and things like, and the interaction of that with a vehicle. That would be amazing. I think I'll let you answer for your side, Liam.
Well, other than modelling or art side of it all, it's more of a person is still willing to learn and drive and make mistakes and learn again, and not just give up at the first hurdle or argue that you are correct when someone has a different opinion. It's ability to take on criticism and work with it and develop yourself. And it's a constant developing within this industry and keeping up with it. I know I struggled with criticism at the start, and all I did was push myself to take it on board and learn from it, and that's the only way I've improved. And seeing someone take on them same traits and want to do the same thing is also a very important part of our team, and it's something we look with in people.
I think it helps as well if you're car mad. That's what it'd be perfect fit. I think Liam's touched it really well. To get comments back on your imagery can be hard sometimes, but to understand that those comments and the opinions that other people have are not a slight on yourself as a person, but rather are just trying to further the artwork. We deal with it daily here. We work directly with creative directors who sometimes you look at their comments and think, you don't know what you're talking about. They have a vision that we don't. And it's important to understand that other people are going to look at your image and feel a different way about it, and that's okay. So I think Liam's hit the nail on the head there. Yeah,
you have to take yourself away from the art, and I wish I kind of did it a little bit more at uni, and it's look at it in a sense of a piece of artwork with your teachers rather than just your work, and you're getting criticism to improve it, not just to make your life harder.
I think I know I've already said my piece, but I'll say another one. I love to see people finishing projects, and I love to see people that understand that good is often better than perfect. We are beholden to timescales here, as is every business. We could make every image absolutely perfect if we wanted to, but ultimately the client needs it in a timescale. So to see people take a project on, do it, maybe not be happy with 100% of it, but understand that when it's done, and then they can then take everything they've learned from that and move on to the next one. It's fantastic.
Yeah, taking what you learn and put it into the next work that you do.
Exactly. Or you can do what I do with all my personal projects, is have 80 of them on the go at the same time and never finish anything.
Yeah, all on your desktop.
All on your desktop, yeah.
Yep, I am perpetually mocked by the rest of the vehicle staff that are still here or have left, and some of the students for that exact same challenge. I was just going to ask one more thing. You kind of alluded to it in something you said a moment ago. If you're not that into cars, which it definitely isn't me, could you cope in your industry?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Matt, who works here, doesn't know his Ferrari from his Fiats. It doesn't matter.
He can drive.
He can drive amazingly, which really helps. We're making art. If you take the car out of it, it's still art. I think, strangely, our work is almost more in environments, really, than making cars, at least from my side of things.
Yeah.
And if you aren't car mad, then that's okay. There's still technical elements to be learned and to be appreciated and understood. Lighting a car is not that different to lighting anything else. There is a way to make it look beautiful. And whether that's lighting or materials or textures and things like that, you could either look at it as, I love this car, I want to make this car look amazing, or I love this image, I want to make this image look amazing. And they're two kind of different ways to look at it. Yeah,
and I came into this job, I was car mad, but I didn't know every bit of a car inside out. I'm still learning things today. I didn't know the needle of a thing, glue at the bottom. Yeah. But you're going to learn a lot here. You're going to learn a lot about cars, but as long as you're passionate about the art and making stuff look amazing and realistic, you're going to suit fine. It's not all about the cars. It's about everything, really. Environments, studios, and just developing yourself. We have multiple days sometimes where if you finish the project that you're on, you just develop yourself more. You work on something that will make you interested in what you're doing. So it's this self-development, and cars isn't everything.
No. You think if someone turned up and they didn't know anything about cars and they didn't even know anything about 3D, but they had the correct attitude, that's a hell of a lot better than knowing all about carburetors and knowing UV front to back. We look for attitude really more than anything else. And if you're excited to learn, excited to keep bettering yourself, then we can't ask for any more than that.
Awesome. It's that good attitude that I was kind of hoping somebody would say. So yeah, awesome. Cheers, guys.
Tick that.
Say thank you very much for such a fantastically insightful hour or so that we've been talking, and I dare say the viewers and students in the future will completely appreciate it. Being given context in two different settings is something that's not always found within these sorts of streams. So thank you so much on their behalf and also our own. And thanks everybody else for joining us today. We do have one more talk on Fuse set to start at 5 p.m. with Yusuf Aliowa, a technical artist from Mental VR, who's going to be talking about Houdini. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you later.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks all.